welcome to the Flixborn podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 120th film. It's the 2018 Western anthology film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. It's directed by Joel and Ethan Cohen, stars James Franco, Brendan Gleeson, Zoe Kazan, Liam Neeson, Tim Blake Nelson, and a range of other people, which I'm not going to read out. I am here with MJ. How are you?
I'm really good, mate. How are you?
Good. We'll put it out there. We've struggled a little bit to get this episode done. We've had a variety of issues and problems. So thanks for sticking with us, and hopefully you'll be able to hear this very, very soon.
I think this is the first time in our 120 odd episodes that we haven't released on the day that we normally release. We do one once a week, and we missed it this week. In fact, we did start recording it, and then my internet completely capitulated and we had to stop. So here we are. We're finally there.
We're even trying to do it today. We've had multiple technical glitches and issues. So
it's always something different too.
Yeah, it's good. All right, well, we start off with our fast flicks and do a quick summary. So go for that with us.
Cool. So Ballad of Buster Scruggs is an anthology of Westerns that introduces interesting new characters with each story and explores a lot about life, death, and making a living in the Old West.
From memory, when we tried to record these last time, I think I said I really liked that. So I like that again.
You still like it?
I do. Yes, I do. I enjoy that because mine was a bit shorter, and it's just that there's a collection of 6 short Western vignettes. So along the same lines, but yes, obviously that idea of a Western is what we've got going with this collection.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's hard to argue with that. And I think it sums it up pretty well if you're trying to explain to someone what the hell this movie is about.
Well, how about you explain to us how this film was put together and what we could discover about its creation?
Yeah, this is a bit more fun. Obviously, the Coen brothers are pretty big names in Hollywood, so it's nice to stumble across one of their films on our Netflix original podcast. But from what I can gather, and I think this is up for dispute, these short stories that were written by them were written over a period of 20 to 25 years. I don't think I can clarify that comment, but obviously there's 6 stories there. They might have started writing one about 20, 25 years ago and slowly added to it with this idea of having a Western-themed anthology. Because it was in January 2017 that they actually announced they were going to make this film in collaboration with Annapurna Television. And in August that year, so about 7 months later, Netflix announced that they would stream it worldwide. So from the outset, it seems like they ruled out traditional film studio funding, just recognizing that the industry had sort of shifted a little bit more on how these smaller projects were financed. Netflix likes to invest in these sort of films, and a lot of bigger studios are looking more at comic books or big established action franchises. And then we see that, and then that's why something like Netflix works out so well. So they did have mixed feelings regarding the distribution that Netflix has. So Ballad of Buster Scruggs did actually receive a limited theatrical release. I think the Coen brothers would have liked a little bit longer, but that's Netflix's model. They release it a little bit, some films a little bit theatrically, and then straight to their service. So they recognise that the idea of home video helped establish them and a lot of their films, but they also understand that the hours and the days and the years that you spend struggling over every little detail of filmmaking is appreciated differently on a big screen. So it's interesting to see that candidness about someone having a movie basically for a streaming service only. So there are a few rumors about this actually trying to be a 6-part television series, but that was knocked on the head pretty quickly, basically saying that they structured them in a way that the script wanted to flow in this way and tell these stories as one. So I found it interesting that Tim Blake Nelson, who plays Buster Scruggs in the first short story of this, actually received a script for this film in 2002. And he was basically said, we're going to make more short stories along with this one, but this is one that we're looking at. And then it wasn't until 2016 that he realized that the project's actually going to commence production. So not that he was sitting around waiting to play Buster Scruggs, but there's an idea of how long this was actually in the works for. So unsurprisingly, watching this film, I was thinking this, but the shoot itself was really demanding. They had a lot of exterior shots with uncovered sets. There was really brutal weather. And I think that in the gal who got rattled, the one with the big wagon train, I kept watching this thinking, man, this would be a pain in the ass to shoot. So apparently it was especially challenging because there was a lot of difficulty coordinating the teams and the direction, and they had 14 wagons that were built from scratch in a New Mexico blacksmith shop, and then they had to ship them in pairs and flatbed trailers to the shooting location, which was in Nebraska. So it's pretty brutal all up, and I could sort of see how that would be the case. And then it gets to a point where, so Netflix doesn't disclose box office results. That's their thing. That's what they do. They don't have to talk about production costs or anything like that. But The Ballad of Buster Scruggs made $6.5 grand on its first day, theatrically released in LA and New York. It was then estimated the film probably made about 36 grand in its opening weekend in America, for a 4-day total of around 45,000. Had these actually been official results, it would have been the lowest release of a Coen Brothers film in their career, but completely different circumstances. So let's not even try and compare it. There's a bit more there, but I've been talking a lot because there's a lot to talk about here. But what can you add to the story?
Not an awful lot, because you've done an excellent job there in covering most stuff. I guess just tying back in with the Coen Brothers, I think it's their first project that they shot digitally, and it's also their longest piece of film as well. I think it was a bit over 2 hours and 13 minutes. Or something
132
like that.
minutes, yeah.
132. And I guess there's those 6 stories, and 2 of them, the girl who got, or the gal who got rattled, like you mentioned, and the All Gold Canyon, which are based on stories by other people as well. So, I guess I haven't really got an awful lot else to add, because I think you did an extensive job there. I did look at some translations of where this title sits, and I think I find this interesting because I don't know, like the Ballad of Buster Scruggs is one of these 6 stories, so it's an interesting. It's obviously the opening one, and you go with the title for that one. I thought it's an interesting title, but in Taiwan it was called the Story of the Old Western Bus, which is a funny one. And in Turkish it was called the Wild West Tales, which I didn't mind. I thought that was a nice little thing, because they are a bunch of very wild tales at times.
It's very true. Something about the ballad. I love the term ballad, and I'll probably talk about this very soon, because it just felt like there was this, as a whole, it felt like almost like a poetry anthology, with great characters, all very different, but it all kind of tied in, and that's why I really love the term ballad. It almost annoyed me that the first story was called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, because I kind of liked it as a whole thing. But the title actually really works well for me.
Good. The bit of box office info, it did play at the Venice Film Festival from memory, and went on to play at a couple of other film festivals before it hit Netflix in November of 2018. You've mentioned filmed in Nebraska, New Mexico, Colorado, and it was nominated for a whole bunch of awards. I think it had 39 nominations and 8 wins. I guess the biggest ones that you want to sort of look at are the 2019 Academy Awards. It had 3 noms for Best Original Song, for When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs, for Wings, which is from the first one, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and also nominated for Best Achievement in Costume Design and Best Adapted Screenplay. So to get 3 Oscar nominations is quite an achievement.
Yeah, and as you said, with Venice Film Festival, it won Best Screenplay at the Venice Film Festival, and it was also nominated for the Golden Lion there. So we don't get to talk about too many big awards with our Netflix original podcast, but this one certainly bucked the trend a little bit.
Yeah, it did. What about some consensus for this one?
Yeah, this is a tick for a lot of boxes for Netflix. So it's a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, and it's a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So basically parallel scores there. But it's got 118,500 ratings on Letterboxd, and then nearly 118,500. Sorry, 118,500 on IMDb, and 128,500 ratings on Letterboxd. So more ratings on Letterboxd. Lots and lots of people have seen this and rated this film and enjoyed this film.
and I think I may have got the numbers a couple of days after you, and both of them have gone up quite a
That's
bit in those
that's
days too.
awesome.
I think Letterboxd, when I looked, was a bit over 129,000. So still getting some eyes watching this one.
That's brilliant.
Rotten Tomatoes, very, very, very positive. The critics had it at 90% on 226 reviews, so certified fresh. And the audience had it on 77% on about 3,500, so quite high on the audience rating for Rotten Tomatoes, which we often see is quite low on some of these films that we look at.
That's awesome. Yeah, as I said, it's a nice change for us.
Yeah, I think early thoughts time to get into what we're thinking. So hit us off.
I love that we would do early thoughts. Remember, we didn't do it, and we kind of went through the whole podcast, and I could never quite tell whether you liked it or not, and vice versa. I love this because now I'm like, oh, what did Jesse think of it? So with me, this was kind of right up my alley. It was such an enjoyable and entertaining watch. As I said, it felt like this kind of poetry anthology that had great characters that were all very different. They all had very different ambitions and all different purposes, but it all tied into this overarching exploration of the Old West in a real fun, tongue-in-cheek kind of way. So in a weird way, it wasn't necessarily how you expect stories to be told. Yet every single finale seemed to just feel so right and so different. And it just left me satisfied at the conclusion of every single story, even the ones that I wasn't enjoying as much. The final scene or the actual conclusion of it, I was like, oh, that works. And I didn't even see it coming. So yeah, this just did a lot right for me.
Good. I agree with what you're saying, and what I'm going to say, I hope it makes sense, because I don't even know, based on what you're saying, this might sound confusing, but like
Sure.
for a film like this that tells 6 different stories, it can be hard to keep people engaged the whole way through, because you've got to constantly refresh and reset and be like, okay, I've just spent a lot of
Got to start
15
again, yeah.
minutes with these characters, got to start again, sort of thing. And while we've got that connection of the West, to me, there are a few things that connect these stories, but thematically and narratively, I would have liked a bit more of a connection. I would have liked something more that connected each of the 6 stories continuously throughout, just for an overall thematic sort of idea, other than just like this idea of the West and death almost, I guess. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well made. But yeah, that's just one little thing that sort of frustrated me early on.
There were 2 things that I felt were really strong in that sense. And one was the idea of death and the idea of making a living and earning your ply. And if you look at every single story, it's all kind of there in very different ways. So maybe it is a bit jarring if you are trying to cling on to a theme, and it's probably more in retrospect that you really notice what they're trying to say. But yeah, it's a fair call.
Yeah. Good. All right. This is we're going to jump into our section where we usually talk about characters separately and scenes differently, but we might try and combine these all together a little bit, because we've got 6 separate little stories. Did you want to start us off with what you'd like to discuss?
Well, how do you want to do it? Do you want to do it in chronological order, or do you want me to do my favorite or my last favorite and build to one?
I'm happy to do the count back if that suits. We can go our least favorites and then move towards what our favorites were, and then go it that way and sort of jump in.
I like it. So I'll start with my number 6, and then you can do your number 6 if it wasn't the same one. I like it. So the one that I liked the least was called Near Algodones. I guess you could say it's the one with James Franco. And the reason, so like the James Franco character, who's called Cowboy, if you check on IMDb, it was just kind of a nothing role. And it never really dragged me in. I never really laughed when I think I was supposed to laugh. And I think it's probably the one where the ending, which was fine, was probably, it just didn't leave me feeling anything. I did enjoy the bank teller. I thought he was very funny. I thought Stephen Root was well cast in that role. But generally, there's not a heap that stands out for me in that story.
Yeah. I think I agree with what you're saying there. Mine's not that one for number 6, so I might talk a little bit. Do I want to jump in where I've got that at now, or?
Yeah, do that.
I had it in number 3.
Okay.
And I think I liked the repetition in this one with that idea of you've got him in that position of being that noose again and again, and just some of the like just towards the end, like you mentioned, there's this girl in a blue dress and just this big contrast, and I guess I sort of found that a little bit comedic, whereas you may not have. I think I like the idea that this one was talking about almost too, these consequences. You have consequences for your actions, and I felt that often in Western films you might not see the person who's created an issue or a problem face those consequences. And this guy, while he was able to, or the cowboy, while he was able to escape once, it finally came back and got him. So I didn't mind that one.
Yeah, and look, I didn't dislike it, and I agree that the final shot, I certainly did chuckle. I was like, huh, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So I still think you're bang on. Like I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I didn't dislike it.
Yeah, I
So
think
now you can say what your number 6 was though when you
good. Yeah, well, I reckon that the pacing for that one was quite good too, because any longer it would have been.
It was quick,
ordinary.
wasn't it?
Yeah, very quick. In 6, I had the Mortal Remains. So I appreciated it. I got it. You've got this idea about who these people in this sort of carriage are, and they're like these bounty hunters, and they tell these stories to distract people, and you could just work out. Like, to me, it was so obvious what that story was about, what was happening. The people in the carriage slowly discovering who these people were, and are they are they worried themselves that they're a part of this sort of story. Just the dribble and the chat that went on in this one sort of had me thinking, what am I getting out of this dialogue? And apart from a couple of bits and pieces, like a lot of that dialogue just did not do anything for me.
That's interesting. So I had that at number 3. So our number 6s and number 3s are the same. And that's great. I get what you're saying, why you didn't like it, because the reason that I did like it was because I did enjoy the dialogue and I enjoyed the conversation. In general, I enjoyed the conversation, but I loved the shifts of power between all those people in the carriage. It was so clear for every little period. One person would just dominate the conversation, talk about themselves, have all this bravado to what they're saying. And then the next one would take the reins, and the next one would take the reins. And by the end of it, they all just shrunk like violets when they realized who they were actually sitting with. And there was nothing to be afraid of. There was no reason for them to do that. And I love the way that the guys, the bounty hunters, spoke so nonchalantly that there was a body on top, and it was so casual. They just dragged it up. So it was, it wasn't groundbreaking, but I did enjoy. I love a thing where I can get something out of the conversation. I think there's a lot there about life and living and your choices that you make, and I think that was that was a bit that stood out for me with that one.
Yeah, I think the other part about that one was, I think, because it's the last one and the previous 5 all had these huge, beautiful, long shots of the environment and the setting, and then this one you've almost got this green screen background that looked quite fake compared to the rest of the settings that we had. So I think that it just felt a little bit off compared to the previous ones as well for me.
I think all the filmmakers needed to have a bit of a break with that one.
Right. Yeah, completely fair. All right, what have you got in at 5?
Number 5, I have Meal Ticket, aka the one with Liam Neeson. I was really bored by this story. I understood what was going on and it was all well and good, but man, I was so tickled by that ending. Like the whole time I was getting not much out of it, and I was like, I want this one to finish. But that ending was actually brilliant. I thought that was sensational, and it was so subtle the way they played it. Because you kind of like, no, they're not going to do it. This is too obvious. He's, throwing a rock down there and he knows what's going to happen. And then the next scene, he's just gone. So I full marks to that ending. And that's what I mean. I loved all the endings of these, even when I wasn't that engrossed for the most of it.
Yeah, I had that one at number 2. I rated that one quite highly. I thought that it was just a nice little narrative showing you the troubles and the lack of funds and this sort of challenge, or this stepping towards poverty and having nothing, and the dire situation that they were in, the choices you have to make to try and switch it up and change it. And obviously you mentioned that you've got this chicken sort of story that you mentioned, but even before that he gets to the stage where he's like, I need something different to run my show. I need a chicken. You see him catching snow on their tongues. You've got these crowds that are sort of minimizing as it's going, and but he's still able to pay to go to a brothel. So just the priorities in his choices, and obviously he was just using and abusing this guy for his stage presence on stage. And I really thought, like you mentioned that conclusion, I thought that he was going to eat the chicken. I thought that's what was going to happen, and then there's going to be a conflict about him eating the chicken. But yeah, for that river scene to play out, that really, I was like, wow, that ending was great.
Was, wasn't it? And what you said, everything you said there can almost be tied into most of the stories, that idea about making a quid and how you are going to make your next quid. Obviously, the two that we've spoken about already, the one with James Franco, his way was just robbing people. He literally tried to rob a bank, and the mortal remains, we talk about them being bounty hunters, but then there's also the idea of the guy playing poker, and then the wife who's got a doctor or whatever who's ours. Like, it's all about how to make money, and you get a vibe that stories of the West really focus on where your next pay packet's going to come from, less so than stories of today, because people are a lot more structured in their jobs and the way they get their salary. So I think that's something that the Coen brothers wanted to buy into by theming them in this, time and place.
Yeah, I guess this is sort of talking about our like themes and ideas, I guess, already a little bit earlier, but exactly the same running thing where you're talking about, making the money. It was like survival. Each of these situations about their ability to survive outside the safety, I guess, of their home location or their society. So and like you mentioned, the three stories that we've seen so far, all three of them are in locations that aren't necessarily where they're set up or their home base. They're moving around, or they're being moved physically themselves. So I completely agree. Good. What do we have? What number are we up to? I'm going to go my fifth now, don't I?
Your fifth, yeah.
I had the gal who got rattled at number 5. It was too long for starters. That one, compared to the rest of them, that one dragged for me. We had Alice, this girl, meeting a boy. You get these complaints about the dog, and this guy falls in love with her. It's quite obvious what was going to happen. Proposes to her. I did enjoy the conclusion, though. I thought that the end with this invading sort of procession of horses and making sure that there's a plan if they do get captured. And then I don't really want to. We haven't given a spoiler alert, but I guess if you're this far in, it's pretty much most of these have been spoiled anyway. But when he gets knocked off the horse and then goes back to the pit, I was like, wow, that was pretty full on too.
I think you've summed that up exactly how I felt about it now. So I had the gal who got rattled number 4. So it was my next one up anyway. I thought it was largely quite a dull story. It felt really slow, and it had me wanting them to arrive at the destination they were going to go to. I think they set up nicely that there was going to be this conflict with this bloke that they had to pay money to, and they were trying to work through that the whole time. Whereas that actually had nothing to do with the conclusion. And then similarly, I really liked that final scene with Mr. Arthur and the Indians. It was a somewhat clean and really satisfying ending for me, despite the fact that Alice shot herself. I liked the idea of the dog, which was just a recurring theme throughout the whole story. It would come back, and the dog was all chirpy and happy at the end, and it was almost just like, all right, back we go to the line. I better tell this bloke that his fiance is dead, but you know what? This is business. I guess I'm going to keep my business partner for a little bit longer than I thought. I liked it. It just worked.
And then I like when they turn the page, and I think, like, because obviously between each story there's the book, and I think the line at the bottom was like, he doesn't know how he's going to tell Mr. Knapp or Nap or whatever his name was.
Mr. That was great. Yeah.
All right, that was your 4th, so my 4th.
That was my 4th, yes.
I had All Gold Canyon in at number 4. I thought it was beautiful. It was well shot. The idea of nature, the idea of animals. You've got a very clear visual symbolism between black and white and good and bad, and I liked the conclusion. I liked the animals coming back and everything sort of returning to normal once our main protagonist walks off. So there wasn't really a lot that happened in this except for some panning for gold.
Look, mate, Old Gold Canyon was my number 1.
Good.
There was there was this peaceful positivity to the whole story, and it was really summed up by obviously the old bloke. Just the way he would say, like, "Good night, Mr. Pocket." The idea that he's not going to lose this gold, and it doesn't matter how long it takes him. He's comfortable and he's happy. I loved it when he put the eggs back in the nest after he saw the owl, and he took one. But the idea that, no, sorry, I don't want to disturb nature too much. I'm one with nature. And then I actually found it really poetic when the old man got shot, and then you heard the owl hooting and flying away, almost like they had formed this bond really nicely. I love the fact that he named his donkey Lucky. It's just, that's the mindset that this bloke's in the whole time. And I think I loved the symmetry of the fact that he walked back through the exact same trees, singing the exact same song, and then that exact same deer wandered back to the peacefulness of the river, that he hadn't disturbed anything. It was beautiful. This was an absolute belter, and for me, it's the one that stands out.
Nice. So, what are we missing from you then? We need your third? No.
My number two.
Number two. What was your number two?
Well, I'm assuming my number two has to be the only one we haven't spoken about, which therefore would be your number one.
My number one is, yes, I think you've worked that out pretty well, because I was still like, what's
Yeah, it is the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the short story that the entire film is named on. It was just a lovely little quick attention grabber. I thought Buster himself was exciting and engaging to watch. Singing that song at the start was just a really nice opening. I don't know why, but it was just a really nice way to start a movie. And then that first shootout, when you realize that Buster's actually a massive badass. I kind of got a feeling that Buster was going to be a bigger part of this whole anthology, but it worked out really nicely that when they killed him off, I was like, oh, this is fun as well. Let's see how we go.
Yeah, set the tone. I really enjoyed the breaking of the fourth wall throughout this. I thought the songs throughout were hilarious. Just that one scene where he walks in and kicks the table and the guy shoots himself. I was in hysterics. I thought, and then that song afterwards where he's not going to be able to gamble no more. This surly surly Joe dude. And yeah, I just this idea of cockiness too. He was such a cocky character. And I just really thought that on the screen of him was excellent. I had that as the number one because I think it was a great start. I thought it set the tone really well, had me engaged straight away, and then I was ready and on board to continue, which is nice.
Yeah, I share your thoughts exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, do we need to say anything about the directors?
Probably not. They're pretty big directors. They're Academy Award winning directors. They've been around for a long time. They do a lot of great stuff.
Yes, if you haven't heard of them, just check out Fargo, Big Lebowski, Hail Caesar, My Brother, We're Out Now. Yes, yeah. So check it out if you need to. Let's talk about some themes, some ideas, or are there any other characters or things that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, look, I really have gone heavy into themes already, but I think I love this idea of death that's explored in every story. The idea that it can be unexpected, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, obviously. It can be inevitable, which is the James Franco story. It can be escaped, which is the gold panning story. It can be avoided, which I guess the gal who got rattled probably didn't have to shoot herself. And it can be a part of us, just like the mortal remains. Like it's just a part of every single one of these stories, but it tells death in a different way. And in film, we say it all the time that death is covered again and again, particularly in Westerns. And I feel like this was just a fun way to do it all in one story. So I love that exploration of death. I think
you're spot on there. The idea that I think all of these deaths too, they were random, they were meaningless, and they were inevitable. Death is inevitable. It's going to happen. So yeah, I think that it did a really good job of looking at that through each story.
Yeah, that's it. And look, in all the ways that these ideas have changed over time, obviously this is based in a historical time, how these stories of death and making a living exist in this world and only in this world, it opens up a new way of storytelling. And as a movie lover, is there anything better than being told a good story? And they've got these stories they want to tell, but they base it in a certain time because they can't tell them without basing it there. and I really appreciate that as well.
Good. Yeah, you mentioned too about making a quid or making money and the idea of survival, and it sort of can tie into this idea of luck, both good and bad. A lot of these characters had some good luck go their way, and obviously there's at least one character in each one that had some bad luck as well. But yeah, I think like I mentioned at the start, I would have enjoyed more than just this idea of death and survival. I don't know. I just wanted. I don't know. I enjoyed it and I liked it, but I just wanted something else. I just wanted something else that connected everything.
It's a risky role when you're doing an anthology, really. Like it's got to be. There's got to be something. Like it's so hard to engage an audience with your characters. That if you work so hard to do that, and then 20 minutes passes and you've got to start again, it's not easy to do.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, what did you take away from this one?
I just found this so enjoyable. Like they just set up this really inviting and comforting tone straight away, and then that weaved its way throughout the entire film. So despite the story shifts, this lightness that they created was always present and always welcome, and I always felt comfortable just sitting in my lounge room watching this movie. So there's also some really fun performances in this as well. Obviously, we got some big name characters, and that always helps when you see a famous faces pop on screen for a short period of time. But I just think the thought and the effort and even the symmetry in all of this just made my heart smile. And when I think of it, I just want to dig a little bit deeper. And I will definitely watch this film again.
Good. Yeah, I'll repeat a few of the things you've mentioned. I guess the locations were great. And I think that, and you've mentioned this too, the idea that you've got they're almost short films, and you get that opportunity to get some big names on board where they don't have to commit to a full shoot. They can commit to a week or a couple of days, and that enables you to have some high quality people in your film, which is a good takeout.
You could argue that Brendan Gleeson did one day. Like that would have been really quick. And he had about 15 lines.
Very, very true. Did you jump onto IMDb to check anyone out?
I did twice. First one was for, and I didn't really need to. I was pretty sure it was him, but Stephen Root, who played the bank teller in the James Franco story. He's a guy from Dodgeball who wears the glasses and has the idea to make the Dodgeball team. He's also in Get Out. He's a guy that I won't spoil Get Out, but he is in Get Out, and he's in True Blood as well. So I've seen him in a lot of things, and I was pretty sure it was him, but he had a lot of he looked a bit funky, so I wanted to double check. Yeah. But the big one that got me was in Meal Ticket, Harry Melling. So he played the torso, I guess. Whatever you. So my wife was watching The Queen's Gambit recently, and I didn't realize this until I clicked on him, and I was like, "Oh, he's in The Queen's Gambit." Yeah, I think I saw that when I walked in. But he's Dudley Dursley in Harry Potter, and I mean, as soon as you know it, you see it. But he's lost a bit of weight. He's looking very different, and it was just a great surprise.
I'm glad you said it, because I probably wouldn't have said it with as much enthusiasm as you, but yeah, that was exactly what I had as well.
So you didn't recognize him?
Nah, not at all.
Yeah.
I was just, but I thought, it's amazing, I guess. And I guess, where there's a lot of those actors and actresses from the set of films of Harry Potter that we're all used to and see lots and lots, so we recognize it quite easily. But that was a crazy film.
It was a good one. I couldn't put my finger on. I'm like, that's a face. I know that face, but bloody hell. And then I think I just saw this guy in The Queen's Gambit 2 days ago. It didn't even click that he was. So there you go.
Well done. All right. Questions. Is there anything you want to ask?
I kind of almost touched on this before, but I never really did. But when we met Buster Scruggs, very beginning, and he talks to us, did you assume that this was going to be a catalogue of stories that he tells from his sort of past, or at least did you think he was going to be some sort of narrator in some capacity?
Yes, and I think that's probably what I was mentioning. I thought there'd be some connection somewhere, and I guess that could be how you could do it as well. You'd have reading the title of each chapter as they turn the page in the book or something like that. That's what I was assuming too. I guess I was like, oh, is he coming back? What's happening? Good pick up for you, I think.
It was, and then as soon as it went to the second story, I was like, is this like a story of him when he was younger? Is this the guy that shot him. Like I wasn't too sure, and then it took me a while to just like clean break away from it and go, no, like Buster Scruggs is done. We're finished with him.
Yep, good. Anything else?
I answered this question at the start. I don't know if you did, but what did you think of the overall film being called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
Yeah, I would have liked it to have been called something else. As much as I love that, and that was my favorite little story, I would have preferred something different to title in, like Death on a Western or something. I don't know. That's rubbish. Anyway, but something that ties it on. Maybe not as
but
explicit.
There's something nice about it when you don't know anything about it. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs to me is like, oh, I'm intrigued by that title before I watch the film. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, that's kind of awkward. Am I talking about the film or am I talking about the first story in the film? That's where it loses you a bit.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't know if we touched the last one, the people in the carriage. Were they going to become victims themselves?
I don't think so. I think it was the idea of fear and paranoia and what sort of level that plays on.
I was hoping that they were. just that idea of them, that door opening, I was like, ooh, maybe they are going to get done. I thought that was funny. So Meal Ticket, the one with Liam Neeson, that's the only one where there's no on-screen violence. Did you pick up on that?
No, I didn't. I didn't. The off-screen violence is pretty damning, though.
Exactly. So you can do violence just as impactful without actually seeing it on screen. So that was the point I was trying to make.
But you know what? When you finish watching that story, like you almost laugh. I was almost like, oh my God, he did it. Like if you had have watched him do it, it would have had a completely different response. So I think I appreciate them doing that way.
Definitely. I think, it's the right choice to do. This one's a random one that just your favorite little story, the all gold canyon one. We have this sort of like mini tourist attraction in the outskirts of our city called Sovereign Hill. Have you ever found gold panning at Sovereign Hill?
Mate, I have. Do I still have it in my room here? I might. Yeah, here we go.
MJ's got up out of his seat and walked over to the bookshelf.
There we go, from Sovereign Hill. So it's like the tiniest speck of gold to the point where sometimes I can't even see it. And I used to wonder whether I actually got it. But yeah, I bought this when I was back in my primary school days. I panned for some gold and find the tiniest bit, and then you could purchase like a little jar of water. I realize that this is a audio medium, but thank you for commentating. I did have one in my desk right here.
Very good. Yeah, the amount of times I've been there, I was never successful. And I did purchase one from the gift shop that had like a little dot in it, but I think I've recently thrown that out because it actually means nothing if you didn't find it yourself. So there's some gold in the tip somewhere.
I'll be honest, I can't see it right now. Whatever went off. Sometimes it goes missing. It's having a nap.
It's melted. Just dissolved into the water.
Probably.
Are we ready to wrap this up?
I think so.
Yeah. Good. So at the end, we give a rating out of 5 for an overall average. Finish us off.
Yeah, look, I've kind of said it all, but this movie just drew me in from ball one, and it just kept feeding me enough of what I liked to keep me going. So the episodic nature makes the runtime easier to swallow because it is long. And then the quick introduction of new and interesting characters, which are often aided by those familiar faces, really help tell those stories. So I like the quick and abrupt endings to each story. And the idea that not everyone's story has a big finale, but everyone's story is kind of worth telling really resonated with me as well. So it's a comfortable 4 stars for me.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Yeah, there's some vignettes in this that are obviously stronger than others, but even though the weaker ones, I still think they're all really well made and all have something in them that give you that shock or that little bit of a thing at the end. You're like, okay, I'm thinking about that. And maybe I needed like a little interlude in between each one to sort of break it up or give me a little bit of space in between each story. Like the turning of the page wasn't enough. I needed more time to process what had happened in each one. But
sure.
I think maybe that's the shock tactics are probably what I like the most about them, and the deaths in each one. So I'm giving it a 4 as well.
Beautiful.
It was a 4. That was an easy one to work out. We are on social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This week, I just wanted to ask, are Western films still relevant today? I mean, this is one of those genres that often clogged up the schedule, decades ago, but we don't see a lot of them these days. So are they still a relevant genre?
Yeah, I mean, obviously not to the level they were, but I think, was there an element of them being quick and easy to shoot that made them churn them out so quickly? But I think the Coens have, these, as I said, these stories couldn't really have been told in any other time in any other place. So that's why it's really important for them to base it in, in the Old West. So I don't think they're as relevant, but I think you can still tell a story.
Yeah, I agree. Great. All right. Well, we're back again next week for a 2018 psychological horror called Cam. It's directed by Daniel Goldhaber. It stars Madeline Brewer, Patch Darragao, Malara Walters, Devin Drood, Amani Hakim, and Michael Dempsey. There we go.
I love that you never look at the names beforehand and you just I'm just going to roll with this. Or yeah. It's great.
I should prepare, but that's all right. I apologize for butchering. I've done it once now, so next week it'll come off a bit nicer.
Maybe.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for catching up, and we finally got it done. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, we did. We did. Ballad of Buster Scruggs in the can, and I'll chat to you next week.
Sounds good.